honey. It's yours.
I'm waiting for the menu to show back up. Hello, everybody. Um, Gosh, I'm sad that we're not in person and I can't see your lovely faces and say hi to all of my friends in Federal Fleet Management. And bear with us. Zoom is not our usual meeting software. So we'll try to do this. But we have 90 minutes together. I'm going to keep this pretty casual. I could talk all day about regulations and guidance, but I'd put you to sleep. And so I did encourage questions in the question and answer. And if we don't answer it through the question answer module, I'll try to answer it out loud. And so I am going to go through like the whole rulemaking process. And then I'll get into the weeds of our motor vehicle management regulations. So I'm Connie Aaron. I'm with GSA's Office of Government-Wide Policy. And I also have on our staff Eric Adams and Marquita Sims, and they are on the chat monitoring that. And I brought in our OGP colleague, Jill Denning. As you know, lots of changes of GSA over the past year. And one of the changes was they moved motor vehicle policy under the travel and transportation branch. So we're all like cross-training today. But we're here to talk about federal fleets. And as everyone who knows me, that's my favorite subject. I've been with GSA almost 35 years. So been around the block a little bit, know a little bit about vehicles and managing fleets and writing policy. I've been with Office of Government Policy since about 1998. So let's get started. So, I'm already gonna, I know they said they're not posting presentations on the website, but if you want a copy of this presentation, don't ask me for any other ones. This presentation that OGP is doing, you can send an email to vehicle.policy@gsa.gov, and we'd be happy to share that with you. I see a question came in already, but I'm going to get started on the rulemaking stuff, and then I'll get to your question about government-owned vehicles and GSA fleet leased vehicles. And so, yeah, you can send questions. If you are online only, meaning audio only, and you really want to ask a question because you don't have access to Zoom, shoot the email to vehicle.policy@gsa.gov. And if someone on our team could just monitor that mailbox too to see if any questions come in that way, we'd be happy to help you. So let's get started on some rulemaking. Why is that not switching? Okay, here we go. So what are our learning objectives for today? Our learning objectives are to understand where regulations come from and how they support your agency mission. We're going to learn the key laws, regulations, and policies that impact federal fleets. We're going to identify stakeholders and key components of federal fleet management. And I'm going to tell you where to find additional resources and information for managing the federal fleets. So let's go to our government class. Back to our history government class, Regulations 101. There are three branches of the federal government. The legislative branch makes the laws, the executive branch carries out the laws, and then the judicial branch interprets the laws. I like to point this out because whatever regulations that our guidance that I'm going to mention today, we fall under the executive branch. So they're for executive branch agencies, applicable to executive branch agencies. But many legislative agencies like GAO, Library of Congress, or even judicial branch agencies like, give me a judicial branch agency, U.S. courts, they adhere to our policies, but it's not required because we can only write policy and guidance for executive branch agencies, even though there's a small little caveats in law. Getting too far in the weeds, but I will let you know about that. So regulations, where do they come from? They're issued by federal agencies, boards, and commissions. They explain how agencies plan to carry out the laws. So let's go back to our little picture here. So Congress will make a law, and then the president signs the law. And inside that law or statute, as we like to call it, it will designate which agency is supposed to implement that law. So, so we explain how agencies plan to carry out the law. It requires statutory authority from the law. And we also have guidance that can have the force and effect of law, but it's not actually in the law. And then regulations, when we issue them, are codified, meaning arranged in what's called the Code of Federal Regulations, CFR. So if you ever hear me mention 41 CFR 102-34, which I'll mention a lot today, CFR means Code of Federal Regulations. So why do agencies regulate? A statute or law is issued. The law directs an agency to issue regulations. Another way we can get our regulatory authority is through executive orders. The president directs an agency to issue regulations. And then there could be an agency initiative. An agency issues regulations under its existing authority. So you'll see that done a lot also. So under their existing authority that's already been given to them by the legislative branch, they can issue regulations. The rulemaking process by which agencies create regulations, rules, process required by statute, and involves public notice and comment. You will notice that sometimes you'll see a rule being published in the Code of the Federal Register that says for final rule or for interim rule. But that's always something to pick up on and look and see, is there time for comment? The rulemaking process involves publishing a notice in the Federal Register. The Federal Register is a daily publication that comes out on the rulemaking process. What are agencies doing? What are they in the works? What's being issued as a final rule? And then there's a section for comments where we seek input from public and other agencies. Here at GSA, something that most of the things that come out of the Office of Government-Wide Policy in the motor vehicle world is we're seeking comment from other agencies because we're telling you how to manage your vehicles. So we don't like to make policy in a bubble, and we want to hear from you. And then we finalize it after the comments are received. We make necessary changes, respond to the comments, and then provide the date the rule goes into effect. So where does GSA get its authority to do motor vehicle regulations? The administrator of GSA is authorized to prescribe regulations to carry out the following functions under 40 USC, United States Code 121C. And part of that is to establish pools or systems for transportation of government personnel and property by motor vehicles within specific areas, among other things. But GSA gets its authority to write guidance and regulations on motor vehicle management from 40 USC 121C. GSA's regulations. So there's a set of regulations that GSA issues, and we call it the Federal Management Regulation, the FMR. You'll see we'll use CFR and FMR back and forth because to us it's the same thing. Are there any other regulations out there that aren't us? No, there's plenty. But all of the ones for motor vehicle management, personal property management, aviation, real estate, FACA, Federal Activities Committee. I forgot what FACA stands for. But anyway, I digress.
It's a Federal Advisory Committee.
I knew that. Yeah. Right. Federal Advisory Committee. Right. And then we have the FAR. If you're in contracting, you're very familiar with the FAR, the Federal Acquisition Regulation. And then there's the GSAR, which is the GSA Acquisition Regulation. And so, I'll talk more about the difference between the FMR and the FPMR, but the FPMR, for those that have been around as long as I have, we remember the FPMR, but it's the Federal Property Management Regulations. And when the administration wanted us to change everything to question and answer format, we moved everything to FMR. And then, oh, okay, slides got a little out of order, that's okay. So, but let's talk about the hierarchy of authorities here, which is important when we're talking about motor vehicle management, because like, why do I have to do this? Why do I have to do that? And so you have statutes at the top and executive orders, OMB circulars and memos, and GAO findings. And then you have regulations, the CFR regulations and bulletins. Some parts of GSA still issue bulletins. We'll find out later, all the motor vehicle ones were rescinded last year. We do amendments to regulations, proposed amendments. We send out notices in the Federal Register. And then we get down to agency guidance. So at the bottom of the pyramid it's where your agency should be issuing guidance based on what we've issued in the FMR. So it's because we don't know your exact mission, or we don't want to impede your mission. We keep things kind of neutral or small in scope or larger in scope so that you can go smaller in scope with your agency internal guidance. But it's important to know about that bottom rung.
Hey, Connie, do you want to answer a question in the box about FMR Bulletin B43 or wait?
Let me see. I'm coming up. Leave it up there. Don't hit anything so I can see it. I'm coming up to a slide that will address that.
All right.
Okay. So let's just finish all this. Issued regulations are issued by, oh wait, that's a repeat. Did I go the wrong way? Okay, anyway. So remember I talked about the FMR, Federal Management Regulation? Well, guess what, folks? Last year, the GSA Office of Government Policy was told to deregulate. And you've heard, if you've in the federal fleet community, you've seen this a lot over the past year about what deregulation has meant for the federal fleet community. It was to align the FMR, the Federal Management Regulation, with the administration's deregulatory priorities of Executive Order 14192 and Executive Order 14219. So we started last summer. We rescinded 14 FMR bulletins, and somebody is asking, given that the Federal Management Regulation Bulletin B43 is currently in effect, nope, we rescinded it. Is there an updated statutory requirement or guidance from GSA for implementing a vehicle allocation methodology study? VAM. So digging into the weeds a little bit here, we rescinded all of our bulletins as part of the deregulatory action. It doesn't mean the information was not good or accurate. You still have to do a VAM because it's in the FMR. And I'll get into that later in the presentation. It's in 41 CFR 102-34 that you have to do a VAM. We rescinded the bulletin that talked about a suggested process because bulletins were advisory in nature. So when they were advisory in nature, it meant that here's an idea. You can do it that way if you like, because we don't know your mission. We're not going to try to impede your mission, but when we put this requirement on here for a VAM, a vehicle allocation methodology study, information that bulletin is still good. It's still available if you need it. Just ask us, vehicle.policy@gsa.gov. We'll get it to you. But VAM studies, they're required by regulation. Your agency needs to come up with how they're going to do their study. You know your mission, and you know what vehicles you need and how you want to conduct your study. It needs to be your agency coming up with that. And I'll get more into that in like 10 seconds. So also part of deregulation, we really cut back on the motor vehicle management regulations. We eliminated one part completely, 6 subparts, and 54 sections. What does that mean? So 41 CFR 102-5, the home to work transportation regulation. I eliminated it, but reserved it. and I moved the important statutory information from home to work transportation and wrapped it into 102-34 motor vehicle management. Okay. So, oh wait, she eliminated 102-5 home to work transportation. Does that mean I can drive a government vehicle home? Now, does that mean you can drive a government vehicle home? No, there's still a process to authorize that. There is a statute that tells you you can't drive a government vehicle home unless you meet A, B, C, D, E, F, G, and whatever else internally you want to do. As part of deregulation, I combined it with another regulation, but you're going to have to go back to the statute to figure out how home to work transportation is going to work in your agency. Our goal is not to impede a mission. You know, deregulation helps you, it gives you more autonomy within the statute, the law, to come up with a program that fits your mission requirements. So as part of the streamlining success, it was published in the Federal Register on December 16th, 2025. We went straight to final rule, but agencies did have a small comment period from the summer up until late November. As part of the rulemaking process, we do this in conjunction with OMB, and OMB decided which agencies they were going to send the rewrite to. So all this to say, as part of the streamlining process of the motor vehicle management regulations in the federal management regulation, I was tasked with pulling all of the non-statutory items out of the regulation and only keeping things that were statutory in there. Okay. What does that mean for you guys? It just means that we are going to issue a customer service guide, and we're calling it, I don't know what we're calling it yet. So it's a new non-regulatory guidance. It's coming soon. I promise it is. We're going to talk about home to work transportation. We're going to talk about fleet right sizing, utilization, and VAM, U.S. government license plate program, fleet management information systems. We're going to have topic pages on gsa.gov, but it's going to be a comprehensive customer service guide for government-wide motor vehicle policy. If you attend our interagency Federal Fleet Policy Council meetings or the interfuel meetings, you know, I've been asking for volunteers and you guys have been stepping up. This guide is going to be peer reviewed by people out there in the field like yourself. I've gotten almost 20 people to volunteer to be part of this motor vehicle policy advisory group. And as soon as we get the product ready to send to that group, they're going to peer review it, and then we will issue it at gsa.gov. So someone earlier had asked the question about one of the things that came out of the regulation 102-34 were vehicle minimum replacement standards. Now let's go back to our Federal Fleet 101 stuff. There's agency-owned vehicles, and then there's GSA fleet leased vehicles. Okay, GSA fleet leasing, they're a business. They're the Avis or Hertz of the federal government. They have their own replacement standards based on their business model. If you lease from GSA Fleet, then you adhere to their replacement standards and replacement standards. So for agency-owned vehicles, because we took that out of 41 CFR 102-34, and also GSA Fleet had to adhere to our regulations too, because they were minimum replacement standards. This is something we're going to work on. We're going to put a suggestion in the non-regulatory guidance customer service guide that's going to be coming out. And then we will work with GSA Fleet and the agencies to come up with a suggested vehicle minimum replacement standard. I could tell you the one that was in the regulation has been the same one that's been there the 35 years I've been here. And we know the progress that vehicles have made in technology. Were they necessarily the best one? No, because they haven't been updated in probably 40, 45 years, those minimum replacement standards. how does that help you that we took it out of a regulation? It helps you because we can change it easier. When it's in a regulation, regulations take a long time. It was just an amazing feat that we were able to update a regulation in less than a year. We have a regulation I'm going to talk about in a little bit that we've been trying to update for 30, 40 years. Where's my GSA fleet, folks? A long time. It just takes a long time to update a regulation, but pulling things that were non-statutory out of a regulation, it doesn't need to be in a regulation. I kept 4 things in the regulation that were non-statutory because I felt like we didn't want to move backwards. VAM, yeah, I'm sorry, kept VAM in there, Vehicle Allocation Methodology Study. I kept Unicor as the provider of license plates in the regulation. That's non-statutory, but I don't need y'all ordering plates off of Amazon. What else did I keep? Where's my group? I should have written my notes down. I kept asset level data reporting. I just felt that was very important. We didn't want to go back to aggregate data. You know what I mean? Telematics is out there. It's we need asset level data reporting for you guys to be able to make great decisions. With your VAM studies, and then what's number 4? Where's Eric or Marquita? Help me. What's number 4 that I kept? Where are my notes? Anyway, I'll think of it later, or they'll put it in the chat. So anyway, a lot of discussion on that. We have a lot to talk about today. I could go on and on about just the benefits from streamlining the regulation. It's going to be a rough year trying to figure out where do I get information from now if it's not in the regulation. Don't worry, we're here. Marquita, Eric, me, we're here. We're here to help. GSA Fleet has a whole team here to help too, okay? So don't worry, we're going to help you through this process. All right, why is this not moving? Okay, remember I talked about how hard it is to change a regulation? Stuck in the old federal property management regulation is the regulation that governs GSA Fleet. We used to call it IFMS, Interagency Fleet Management Systems. It was last updated in 1986. Don't worry, we haven't forgotten 41 CFR 10139. It is still stuck in the FPMR. I will tell you, the people who used to work on this reg had vision. So I think I have this slide wrong. I think it was prior to 2016, but they had vision. 10 years ago, they knew they were going to pull operational information out of the regulation. And GSA Fleet issued their first GSA Fleet customer leasing guide. Okay. They just updated it again. So make sure you go take a look at the new update that came out December 11th, 2025. So the people that were working on regulations, they had a vision. When we were going to move 10139 out of the FPMR and put it into the FMR, they were going to pull all the operational information from GSA Fleet, stuff that doesn't need to be in a regulation because we hadn't updated it since 1986, into a customer service leasing guide. That is a great document. It is full of so much information. Like I said, they just updated it. It's a great resource. So look for that. They're putting the where you can find it in the chat. But you know what? If you just Google GSA Fleet Customer Leasing Guide, the newest version shows up. So they had vision back then, and so they recently published the update. And then anything else that was in 41 CFR 101-39 pertaining to fleet management systems. It gets a little bit in the weeds here, but a fleet management system is a GSA fleet that buys vehicles and leases them to other federal agencies. The statutory part of that is going to be moved to the FMR. So stay tuned. We're working really hard on this. So getting through all the regulations, FMR, FAR, we have what was at the bottom of the pyramid now is your internal agency guidance. You could ask me all day long, hey, Connie, can I stop for lunch from point A to point B in a government vehicle? Is that official use? And I'm going to say, Well, I wish I could answer that. You need to look at your internal agency guidance, especially when it comes to official use. Okay. I get more into that later. I'm going to talk more about that later. But it is so important. Your agencies have it. Trust me, I've seen it. You can do a Google search. You have internal agency guidance. A lot of it was based on the old FMR 102-5 and 102-34. So my apologies that a lot of those references have changed. And so if you're an agency fleet manager, you're going to have to change your internal guidance to reflect the new numbering system. The fact that we reserved and took all the information out of 102-5, you can't reference that anymore for home to work. You have to reference the new 102-34 for home to work transportation. But if you need help, ask for help. We're here to help. We're all here to help. If you need help with your internal agency guidance, let us help you with that. We got to learn the new numbers ourselves because I don't have them memorized like I used to. But just ask for help to update your internal agency guidance. And let me see, I'm checking on here. Okay, so let me click this. Okay. All right, so now we're just going to sit back a little bit. We're going to go back to the beginning. So motor vehicles in the federal government are personal property assets. We all know that, right? If you were here in person, I'd ask you to raise your hand. Who is also a personal property manager along with being a motor vehicle policy manager? A lot of you would raise your hands because a lot of you also manage personal property. So many property managers also manage their agency's federal motor vehicle fleet. They manage their travel management, aircraft, fleet, real property, mail management, and transportation programs. We understand that. And our office actually is set up to address all those policy areas. So if you ever have a question about travel or aircraft or real property or mail or transportation or relocation, we got you. Just shoot it to us at vehicle.policy@gsa.gov and I'll get you to the right person to talk to. Okay. So we're going to keep moving on forward here.
Oh, we just got a question in the Q&A if you want to home to work.
Yeah, does home to work require the head of the agency approval if the employee is on TDY or official travel? So home to work is covered under 30 USC 1344. That's the regulation. It is not there in the law, in the statute, it says home to work does not apply when you're on official travel. But let me go back here. Do you see that at the bottom of my page? Internal agency guidance. Just because our regulation says it does not apply, it doesn't mean if you're on official travel, you get to drive a government vehicle home. What does your internal agency guidance say for that? So as a GSA employee, if I was going on travel and it was advantageous to the government for me to bring the government vehicle to my house the night before travel and depart from my home because it was advantageous to the government, I would notate that on my travel orders and my supervisor would have to approve it. That's my internal agency guidance as a GSA employee. I don't know what your internal agency guidance is on that subject, but don't think because the home to work part of 102-34 does not apply to official travel that you can just do it. So cool. Great question. All right. So anybody who knows me, I love to talk about our sphere of influence here in the motor vehicle fleets. You guys, even with the furlough, you guys did a great job on getting data reported for the FY25 data set. That closed on February 6th. Thank you. So I'm presenting FY24 data because we won't be able to finalize, validate, and analyze that new data that we just wrapped up getting from you guys until probably early summer. There's so much data in there because don't forget, we're collecting asset level data. So almost 700,000 vehicles in the federal fleet. So that's a lot of data to go through. But I love just pointing out, guys, your sphere of influence in the federal government. You guys keep the missions rolling. And without you guys as a fleet manager, you need to give yourselves a pat on the back. Missions would not keep rolling. They would not keep going. They'd be like, where do I get a vehicle from? Where do I get a vehicle from? You guys traveled in FY24, over 5 billion miles of the operating cost of 5.64 billion. The domestic federal fleet is almost 94% of the fleet, and the foreign fleet is only about 6%. Most of us see on the road are sedans all the time because we're just not looking, but you guys know this, you're fleet managers. Most of the federal fleet are trucks. They're work vehicles. 65% in 2024 were work vehicles. Passenger vehicles are only at 33%. So composition of by agency type, Postal Service accounts for 37% of the federal fleet. Civilian agency is 36%, and military is about 27% of the federal fleet. And what about vehicle source? 68% of the vehicle is agency owned. How do I know if my vehicle is agency owned or GSA fleet leased? If you lease from GSA Fleet, it's got a G on the license plate. If you're agency owned, it's got the letter code for your agency on it. So if you're with Smithsonian, it's SI. And look, for 35 years, y'all been hearing me say this one joke. Why is Army W? Why do license plates for the Army start with W? And the answer is because agriculture took A. Yay! Look, see, I can even humor myself when I'm in a room by myself with just my cat. Anyway, and so commercial leased is less than 1%. So that's our vehicle source. And questions are coming in, and if anybody can answer the stuff about travel, that would be great. I'd appreciate that. Somebody said, what are the major changes made in the 2025 customer leasing guide versus the 2018 version? Ooh, I'm sorry. I put GSA Fleet through the ringer because they had already finished updating their customer leasing guide, and then I changed all the references to it for them. I think GSA Fleet will need to answer that. I don't know what the major changes were, but they did. They changed it, and they are answering that now. Okay, good. Thank you. Okay. I can breeze through these, but if anyone ever asks as a fleet manager, my 35 years in federal fleet management, it seems like fleet managers are always caught under the other duties as assigned. But I've watched this, the level of this position grow over the years. From doing maintenance on site, screwing on license plates, and then having extra vehicles sitting around in case someone broke down, to telematics, going to marshaling sites to turn in vehicles and pick up your new one with the leasing program. Man, the program has changed by leaps and bounds. But I always like to say, give you a definition so you can put it in your position description, or if you want to write yourself an award. Here's some terminology for you. What is federal fleet manager? An agency that needs motor vehicles to function engages in some sort of fleet operations and fleet management. Your agency isn't going to get the job done unless you're there, giving them the vehicles. The purpose of fleet management is to oversee all fleet acquisition and disposal activities, in-use management of the motor vehicles, including maintenance, in order to increase productivity and help your agency meet its mission requirements. So you'll notice, what is federal fleet management? And I put, it's the in-use management of the motor vehicles. I didn't say drivers, even though I know a lot of you fleet managers have to do take care of driver management too. Driver management is just not part of our regulations, but I'll get into that later, but we can get that information from. So what makes us unique is we're regulated by 41 CFR 102-34 motor vehicle management. And look, I made that easier for you. I got rid of 41 CFR 102-5 and put it into 102-34. So now you're like, I just to remember the 41 CFR 102-34 motor vehicle management. So I'm going to dig deeper into that. So everyone keeps asking me, what'd you do with 102-5? What'd you do with 102-5? Home to work transportation. If you want to see the statute about 102-5 home to work transportation, and then also what gives us, why do we have to manage our fleets? You would go to 31 USC 1344, which is passenger carrier use. That's the law. It's the statute. Go read it. You'll see lots of notes at the bottom. Funds available to a federal agency by appropriation or otherwise may be expended by the federal agency for the maintenance, operation, or repair of any passenger carrier, only to the extent that such carrier is used to provide transportation for official purposes. I'll get more into it later, but remember, you keep asking, can I stop for lunch? Is lunch an official purpose? Okay, I'm going to keep pointing little small tidbits out like that, okay? So see where it says by appropriation, otherwise that fits right into our question that came in. Are there plans to simplify the lease versus purchase worksheet? Not sure if that's GSA or not, but it's brutal to go through. William Johnson asked that. It's not GSA. I don't think it's GSA Fleet either. Lease purchase worksheet. That must be something internal to your agency, but that just means that you're doing what you need to do. Are you going to buy a vehicle, or are you going to lease it from GSA Fleet, or from some other source? Get it from excess. Those are questions fleet managers have to ask and answer. So yeah, I'm not sure whose worksheet that is. Maybe one of our friends here online will know what agency you're with and who came up with that worksheet. So let's talk about our main reg. This is our, if anyone just start spewing it out. If anyone asks what governs the federal motor vehicle fleet, it's 41 CFR 102-34 motor vehicle management. Governs the economical and efficient management and control of motor vehicles that the government owns, leases commercially, or leases through GSA, i.e. GSA Fleet. It governs the use of passenger carriers to transport employees between homes and places of work. That's the home to work transportation. So what gives GSA the authority to issue what we left in 41 CFR 102-34 motor vehicle management? I gave you a whole list of all the US codes and then an executive order. So if you're really, really bored, I know all the snow kind of went away, but I guess in California it's still snowing. But you can look up I have links. If you ask me for a copy at vehicle.policy@gsa.gov, you'll get the copy of this presentation. There are links to all the US codes. You want to see, why is this in the regulation? Why is that in the regulation? Why is this not in the regulation? You'll see these are all of our statutory authorities for the regulation. So 102-34 motor vehicle management, it's applicable to government furnished equipment in order to ensure adequate control over the use of motor vehicles. And again, notice it does not say driver, okay? We define terms in this regulation. What is a motor vehicle? I got a question yesterday asking me about forklifts. And I guess in the military world, what do y'all call that? MHEs, material handling equipment. Well, an MHE is not a motor vehicle according to our regulation. Okay. And then it defines the scope. 102-34, the regulation, the guidance we issue are for non-tactical vehicles. Okay. Defines the scope. Military design vehicles are excluded. Law enforcement vehicles are excluded from most provisions, but there's a caveat to that, and I'll talk more about that later. Your head of your agency has to designate that vehicle as law enforcement to be excluded from the scope of 102-34. Okay. So, this used to be 102-34 used to match the vehicle life cycle. We had acquisition, end-use management, and disposal. But anything that was non-statutory, I had to take out of the reg. Anything that was already in another regulation, I had to take out. So disposal is already in the personal property management regulations. So I had to take it out of 102-34. So we've got acquisition, end-use management, such as identification and registration, official use, home to work transportation, and asset level data reporting, your favorite. Okay. So I'm just going to go through this part real quickly. Subpart B of 102-34, obtaining fuel efficient motor vehicles is still in there. You have to purchase and lease vehicles that achieve maximal fuel efficiency. Have body types, engine sizes, and options essential to your agency's mission. And you have to do a VAM study. Establish and document a structured vehicle allocation methodology study, VAM. We did resend B43, the bulletin. That was an advisory bulletin that talked about the suggested process for a VAM. But the VAM, the requirement for a VAM is still in the regulation 102-34. What the content that was in the rescinded bulletin, we're going to put that in a customer service guide, but only after it's been peer reviewed by fleet managers like you in the field that help us write policy and guidance. So this is a big one we get a lot of questions on, is identifying and registering motor vehicles. It's that if it's in the regulation, it's coming from a statute. So the preferred identification is the license plate, and the license plate say for official use only on it, and U.S. government. Identification of the agency or service that owns or leases the vehicle, seal or tag code. So like if you lease from GSA Fleet, you've got G as the owner of the vehicle, is GSA for the G, and then they do have the little GSA logo. I don't have a GSA Fleet tag. They do have GSA logo in the corner. So the license plate is the preferred location for this identification. You register. That was the fourth thing I kept in there. This is non-statutory, but I kept it in there because it just made sense too. You register your vehicles and license plates in gsafleet.gov's vehicle registration service, formerly known as FMVRS. So that's where you're going to put that.
We kept the VAM, AOD, Unicore, and vehicle registration.
Yeah, there you go. I knew I'd eventually come across it again. Thank you. And so there's a great team over at GSA Fleet and at Unicore that helps them manage the license plate program, and Marquita Sims on our team helps facilitate that also. So it's important, the license plates. And that was important to keep in the reg, and management of the plates and making sure they were where they needed to be and destroyed when they needed to be. And then obtain a U.S. government license plate from Unicore. It's Marquita's typing the answer. Okay. So going back to identifying and registering motor vehicles, which is subpart C, we do have a desk reference guide for U.S. government license plates and a new memorandum of understanding with Unicore. If you would like copies of that, you can send your request to vehicle.policy@gsa.gov. And then gsafleet.gov has a vehicle registration service user guide also, and I've put that link in the presentation. Exemptions. When can I not identify my vehicle as a government vehicle? There's 3 types of exemptions still: limited, unlimited, and special. Unlimited is mainly for investigative law enforcement, intelligence, or security duties. Limited are the agency head authorizes it for up to 3 years, and it can now include administrative vehicles. Well, that's been since 9/11. So, but there is a process for doing that. You need to check with your headquarters agency fleet manager to find out what is the process for removing license plate for emission on your government vehicle. And then we're going to get into subpart D, our favorite item in the regulation: official use of government vehicles. What is official use? Official use is using a motor vehicle to perform your agency's mission as authorized by your agency. So everyone sends us questions. GSA Fleet gets questions. OGP gets questions. I have a home to work vehicle, and when I'm driving to my first appointment in the morning, I'm passing right past my child's daycare center. Can I drop them off along the way? That's not something GSA can answer. Is it official use? Did your agency authorize that side trip? Can I buy lunch? Is the #1 asked question while in a government vehicle. You name it, we've been asked it. Can I, so we get questions too from citizens, because remember, government vehicles are identified, so they know you're a government vehicle. And we'll see, I saw a bus at the beach that had a government license plate on it. Why were all of those people at the beach? And so you go, they send you the tag number, which beach they were at, and you look it up and you say, oh, well, that's Morale, Welfare, and Recreation, MWR. Part of their mission is taking people to the beach, activities for their child care centers, right? So it's mission related. When I go to a air show at Oceana, a government bus picks me up from a parking lot with either a GSA Fleet or a Navy tag on it to take me to the air show. But I'm not a government employee. So there are, I mean, I am a government employee, but most people aren't. You know what I was saying. So there are instances where it's an appearance of impropriety, but you just got to think it through. Am I using this vehicle to perform my agency's mission as authorized by my agency? So we're going to send you back to your headquarters fleet manager if you ask us a specific question about official use. We're going to ask you to talk to your agency's general counsel's office, and we're going to ask you to look up your own internal guidance. Does your internal guidance say you can stop and buy lunch on the way? Highly recommend you go to one of GSA Fleet's personal liability workshops. They're excellent. It's being offered several times in the month of March. So look up on the GSA Fleet events page and go to the personal liability workshop. And then that will help you decide, is this official use? Is this worth me losing my job over because I wanted to stop and eat lunch in my government vehicle? So, okay. Official use. So subpart D. Hey, there it is. Home to work transportation. Got rid of 102-5, home to work transportation, 41 CFR 102-5. And now it's in 102-34 subpart D, home to work transportation. So generally, it's not allowed to drive a government vehicle home, and the approval authority may not be delegated. It still has to be the head of the agency delegating that. Employees may be approved home to work by the head of the agency for field work for up to 2 years, clear and present danger, 15 days, compelling operation consideration, 15 days. Emergency home to work use 15 days are approved by person or specific job position. Field work means official work requiring the employee's presence at various locations other than his or her regular place of work, multiple stops within the accepted local community area, limited use beyond the local community area, or transportation to remote locations that are only accessible with government-provided transportation. Anyway, what does this mean? Can I drive a government vehicle home? If the head of your agency has authorized you to do it, and you have the approval, then I guess you can, right? But it cannot be delegated down. Well, my supervisor said I could do it. Supervisor, well, I guess your supervisor could be the head of your agency, right? Could be. So that's where home to work transportation is found. It's head of agency defined. It is. The head of the agency is secretary level. If you're with Navy, Secretary of Navy, Secretary of Air Force. If you're a GSA employee, it's the administrator of GSA. It's literally the head of your agency has to approve it. Now, as a headquarters fleet manager, I know you have a process in place to make this easier. You know, you're not pushing paperwork to the head of your agency on a daily basis saying, hey, so-and-so wants to take the vehicle home. You have a process in place. If you're in the field, you need to just ask your headquarters fleet manager, what's the process of getting this approved? Are we doing it by job title or specific person? So there's a process in place. Trust me, agency heads, your headquarters fleet managers have process in place to make this work effectively for their agencies. So home to work transportation is not covered by those who are an official TDY. I kind of already addressed that. If you're on a permanent change of station, travel, orders, or employees who are essential for the safe and efficient performance of intelligence, counterintelligence, protective services, or criminal law enforcement duties. Here's the caveat, folks. When designated in writing as such by their agency head. Just because you're a law enforcement officer doesn't mean you're bypassing any rules here, right? It's just a different process. The head of your agency still needs to designate you in writing as a law enforcement that is exempt from home to work. Okay, so just because you're law enforcement or counterintelligence doesn't give you carte blanche to drive a government vehicle home. Always ask. So, you know, I don't even know that we need, I could have gotten rid of this slide, I guess. Official use of government vehicles, home to work transportation. We never addressed virtual telework or remote workers because it was a complicated issue. Each agency handles virtual workers a little differently with regards to home to work transportation. You need to contact your agency general counsel's office for assistance on this issue. There's always an option to park at an alternate location, such as a local post office or a nearby federal facility, but ask permission if you're going to be doing that with your government vehicle. Somebody said, are we able to establish easy pass accounts? That's internal agency policy. If you lease from GSA Fleet, they don't provide it. So you need to talk internally to your agency fleet manager about easy pass tolling. I live in an area where you can't drive anywhere without paying a toll. I'm in the Norfolk, Virginia Beach area. I had tolls everywhere. And so you need these little, we have to pay our tolls. So we're not exempt. Unless it's part of your mission and you're like in high pursuit. But that's another long whole story. We'll save that for another workshop. All right, we're almost done here with 102.34. Then we'll get into some more fun stuff. Subpart J, I'm still having you report your motor vehicle fleet data because it's required. It's by statute. Agencies must have a fleet management information system at the department or agency level. And then you're reporting data. Right now, you're reporting data into FAST, the Federal Automotive Statistical Tool. Thank you again for those who met the completion date on that. The system was closed up February 6th. So thank you for getting your data in. And all that data that went into FAST, DOE, Department of Energy FEMP, is going to take their part and take what they need out of it. We're going to funnel some information to EPA for what they need, for some information to OMB, and then DOT also wants some of your information that you put in there for statutory requirement for them to report medium and heavy duty trucks by state. Excuse me. And then we have here at GSA the Federal Fleet Report, which we compile the inventory, acquisition costs, mileage, and fuel use data for the federal motor vehicles reported annually to GSA and you're doing it at a standardized federal reporting system as designated by GSA. Currently, that system is FAST. Okay. Whew. All right, everybody take a breather. We're moving away from 41 CFR 102-34. And we're going into, oh goodness, why do I see that 101 there? 41 CFR 101-26.5 GSA procurement programs. 101 means it's still stuck in the FPMR from way back when. But that is where it is for right now. So GSA Fleet is the mandatory source for procurement of all new non-tactical motor vehicles for DoD and federal executive agencies. The Federal Vehicle Standards classifies various types and sizes of commercially available vehicles and establishes a minimum technical quality and optional equipment specification, which is published by GSA Fleet annually. And then I have a link to the standards, which I hope that link still works. So GSA Fleet, for purchasing motor vehicles, is the mandatory source. And somebody just asked, is it the mandatory source for experimental and research vehicles? And I'm hoping somebody from GSA Fleet will answer that. Because if it's not a special vehicle, then I think it is still, you know, if it's not some you know, special made vehicle. But GSA Fleet, and what makes them the mandatory source is this 41 CFR 101-26.5. Okay, here we are with another 101. We talked a little bit about this earlier. 41 CFR 101-39 is the regulation that governs GSA Fleet. It provides specific information on leasing vehicles from GSA Fleet. Currently, GSA Fleet leasing is non-mandatory. GSA Fleet customers should reference the GSA Fleet customer leasing guide for information on leasing from GSA Fleet. And GSA Fleet full service vehicle leasing program is not mandatory. I just said that, but it's a great deal. You get maintenance control center, accident control center. You get a new vehicle every few years or whatever under the replacement cycle.
You see, are there exceptions to GSA Fleet being the mandatory source?
For purchasing, there are limited exceptions. And I'm hoping somebody from GSA Fleet will just type in the answer, because I don't know that off the top of my head. But you know what? They're always available to answer a question. Like I know if you need a vehicle in a hurry, they have well, they used to have it. I don't know it, but they used to have an express desk. And if you needed a vehicle and it faster than they could procure it for you, you could get a waiver. But there is a waiver process, yes. See, look, I'm answering my own question here. There is a waiver process for that mandatory for purchasing. Okay, so let's move back into, so somebody's asking about all-terrain vehicles. Are ATVs motor vehicles? ATVs aren't motor vehicles. And so I don't know what your internal agency guidance is on procuring ATVs, or and so that's something you would have to ask your own general counsel's office about. but ATVs, all-terrain vehicles are not motor vehicles. Okay, let's talk. We're at 304. Okay. Agency directives, handbooks, and policies. Cannot stress that enough. The importance of finding out your own agency internal guidance. Fleet managers should seek out and learn internal directives, handbooks, and policies regarding the management of their motor vehicle fleet. Get to know who your agency fleet manager is. And we all know fleet managers are also property managers. So find out who your property manager is. And then a lot of times the questions we get are actually a travel question. So find out who your agency travel manager is. And then I guess I could have taken this out, agency sustainability officers. But those are important people to get to know, even if you're at the field level. If you have to find out who your regional contacts are or bureau contacts before you're allowed to contact headquarters. Something that there's a reason why I've stayed in fleet management for 35 years, because you guys are the best. Nicest group of people I ever met, worked with, easiest group of people, always willing to help. I've never, but see, I'm not in the field, but I've never known an agency fleet manager tell someone, well, you didn't go through chain of command, but maybe you should. Look, I'm digressing here. But always ask. If you don't know who your agency fleet manager is, send us an email at vehicle.policy@gsa.gov, and we'll try to figure out who that is. And I do realize that some agencies right now are operating without an agency fleet manager. Just because there's been so many retirements and people leaving the government over the last year, I applaud those who have stepped into that role out in the field and the bureau level, the service level that's trying to handle the agency wide, especially fast reporting. Thank you, because you got it done. So again, pat yourself on the back for those who are taking over that headquarters agency fleet jobs right now until they can bring some more folks in to take that. All right, so remember that was an hour ago. I was talking about executive orders. There are some executive orders out there that are still good. The executive order on a lot of what these executive orders do, or even sometimes in regulation, they ask you to write internal guidance. So Executive Order 13513 goes all the way back to 2009. It instructs your agency to issue a guidance on texting while driving. And there's a FAR citation in there that you need to put into your contracts for encouraging contractor policies to ban text messaging while driving. But just a note to that is we do have to adhere to all state and local laws regarding safety, including the use of mobile devices while driving. So if the local government outlaws texting while driving or outlaws using whatever mobile device, you need to adhere to that and work through and write agency issued guidance on it. So now we're getting into TDY. How does the federal travel regulation relate to fleet management? And I will tell you, the federal travel regulation went through a major streamlining overhaul exercise too. And you know, hats off to Jill and the travel policy team on getting that completed. Big takeaways here is a lot of questions come into our office in motor vehicle policy, but they're actually a travel question, and it mainly deals with defining modes of transportation. What is a mode of transportation? Is it common carrier, which is an airplane, or rail, or what's somebody help me, what are those Ubers called? There's another term for it. Always forget.
TNCs? Transportation?
TNCs.
Network?
Yeah, there you go. TNCs. So what motor transportations are authorized in your orders? GOVs are in the FTR and POVs are listed in the FTR. At least I assume they still are. But the agency must select the method most advantageous to the government when costs and other factors are considered. So like one of the questions we get a lot is, hey, I want to drive a government vehicle from Virginia to Colorado because I'm going TDY and I'm afraid to fly. So can I drive a government vehicle? Or how many hours a day can I drive a government vehicle? You know, that's a travel question. What's your internal agency guidance on your mode of transportation you've been authorized? What's most advantageous to the government? So that's a travel question. If you decide to drive a GOV from Virginia to Colorado instead of taking the common carrier flying. So that's why I always bring this up in this class. But and another thing I want to bring up is GSA does not regulate local travel. What is local travel? Local travel is it's defined by your agency. So Jill will correct me, but for GSA, as a GSA employee, normally local travel is within the MSA or in my small area, 50 miles. So for DC, it's by county for GSA employees. But for down here, down in Norfolk, Virginia, if I travel within that 50 miles, it's considered local travel. Okay. GSA does not regulate local travel. So we get this question a lot. Can I drive? I have a home to work vehicle assigned and I want to drive it into the office, but on the way back, I want to drive it to another person's house, or I want to get on the toll, express tolls and not have to pay it, or things like that. We don't regulate local travel. If it's within your commuting area, GSA doesn't do that. We would send you back to your agency travel manager with that question. So here's another good one. For what purposes may a government vehicle be used while TDY? So this paragraph, official purchase purposes, which include transportation between places of official business, between such places of temporary lodging and barbershops, and everybody, if you've been in the government a while, you've seen this clause. It used to be in the FTR, but it was taken out, but it's going to be in the guidance, the federal travel policy guidance document that's coming out. So it's still good information. When you're TDY, what can you use a government vehicle for? That's not official. You know, going to a place of worship, going to the dry cleaners, things like that. And so if you had a question about using a government vehicle while TDY, you could talk to your agency's travel manager about that and look at your internal travel guidance for that answer to that question.
And we got we got a travel question.
Go ahead. I was recently asked about a daily mileage limit for an individual. I've never seen anything referring to something like that. Is there a daily use limit?
Not for travel, at least not in the FTR. Your agency may have something, but for TDY travel, no. It should be, they should get there the most expeditiously way as possible. But I mean, we don't have like 300 or 400 or anything like that.
Right. And in the motor vehicle world, we don't regulate that either because we don't regulate drivers. And if someone asks the question, can I drive 400 miles in a day? I don't know. Can you? There's something called driver fatigue. If you're a commercial driver's, if you have a CDL, commercial driver's license, and there are some parts of that, and I think I get into that later in the presentation, but there are some parts of that that are included, that federal employees driving a larger vehicle that requires a CDL, they driver fatigue is an issue. Electronic logging devices, things like that. That's agency policy. So I'm going to keep moseying along because I have way too many slides and I talk way too much. So records keeping. How do I know what records I need to keep as a fleet manager? It's the National Archives and Records Administration. They used to be the General Record Schedule 10, but it's now GRS 5.4, facility, equipment, vehicle, property, and supplies records. So there's the link for National Archives and how to get you that records management. So National Archives determines that. Excuse me. And we talked about this earlier. GSA's regulations are towards the asset, the personal property asset, the motor vehicle, because GSA does not regulate drivers, but OPM does. CFR Title 5, Part 930, Subpart A, motor vehicle operators. And you're going to like, well, that sounds like that's somebody who is a driver. Well, if you read into Subpart A, the definition of a motor vehicle operator are people who drive for a living for the government, but it's also incidental use drivers, which would be me, who drives a government vehicle maybe once every 5 years. I'm an incidental use driver. But they go into definitions, medical examinations, authorizations, corrective actions. And so again, what they tend to do and other regulatory things is they tell your agency to write internal guidance. The CFR Title 5, Part 930 gives you an outline and tells you to write internal agency guidance on your drivers. Okay. Oh, I talked about this already. DOT regulates some drivers and vehicles. Federally owned and operated vehicles, not for hire contractors, are not subject to Federal Motor Carrier Safety Regulations 41 CFR 390-399. But if you have a contractor driving that government vehicle, it is for hire, and they are applicable. Not my area, but I get this question asked a lot, and hopefully Bill from Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration has not retired, but I got Bill's name, email address, I have his phone number if you need it. If you ever have a question about CDLs and which regulations are government drivers have to adhere to as far as the Federal Motor Carrier Safety regulations, let me know and I'll hook you up with Bill. Sample agency policy. We're just going to keep trudging along. So I'm big on this. I love seeing agency policies. Bill retired. Somebody just told me. Dang, who's the new person? Carrie, find me the new person. Everyone, thank you, Bill. Bill from Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration was fantastic over the years, answering all of our crazy questions. I mean, for years, he answered our crazy questions in the federal fleet. I'd love to know who took his place. So thank you for letting us know that Bill retired. But anyway, sample agency policy. I love to see sample internal agency policy. And this is something that was near and dear to my heart at the time, but an agency fleet manager developed a tool to ensure employees are eligible to drive a government vehicle. It was called a driver authorization tool, and they automated it through smart sheets, and they coordinated with their agency safety, occupational, and health manager. If you're audio only, I'm sorry you can't see it. I'm not going to go over it, but this is something, just a little snippet of what sample agency policy looks like. And so it's there. Ask for the copy of the presentation. We'll get it to you. Okay. So you can see what sample agency policy looks like. If you ever need assistance writing agency policy, just ask for help. We'll help you. Mandates, where to go. Okay, here are the links. Lots of links. And I'm just going to keep on going. Where do I go for help? So anything involving EPACT, ESA, you go to DOE FED, which is the Federal Energy Management Program. GSA, you know what we do, and then your agency. Go to your agency headquarters for help. Lots of links coming up. I'm not going to go through them all. Just in a conversation with EPA today, yep, they have a little hand on the federal fleets too. ESA 141 requires federal agencies to acquire low greenhouse gas emitting vehicles. There's a link to their EPA federal fleets website. If you need help with that, let me know. Where do I go for help in my agency? start with your agency fleet manager. If allowed, chain of command again. Don't know how it works in your agency, but talk to your agency general counsel's office. Look for agency directives and guidance documents. Always know who your agency travel manager is. What's the most advantageous mode of transportation being authorized for that TDY trip? But I really want to drive the government vehicle 600 miles in one day. Can I do that? I don't like airplanes. Anyway, and then contracting officers. Why do I always bring up talking to contracting officers? It's because of contracts. Can a contractor drive a government vehicle? Can a non-federal person drive a government vehicle? Well, if it's a contractor, there's something in the contract. So go back to the contracting officer. They will have the correct FAR citations that allow contractors to drive government vehicles. They'll tell them what private insurance and the amount of insurance that needs to be included. So your contracting officer, if you issue vehicles to contractors, the contracting officer for the contractors that are there doing the mission can help you with government vehicle usage. And let's not forget our most valuable resource for assistance are your fellow fleet and property managers. There's a list on our website, gsa.gov/vehicle policy, or you can send an email to vehicle.policy@gsa.gov. If you're lacking a headquarters fleet manager, just reach out to us. We'll tell you who's acting, okay? Other miscellaneous laws and stuff. I always like to put this up here. You can Google it if you want to see a copy of it. But Home to Work is the 1986 Passenger Carrier Act. Incidental use of government vehicles. Incidental use, what is that? It's the opposite of official use, okay? Am I authorized to use a vehicle for other than official purposes? We do not talk about that in GSA regs, but if you want to read the 1989 Ethics Reform Act, be my guest. Incidental use. Does your agency have a policy on incidental use? What would incidental use be? It would be stopping for lunch, right? Okay. Personal liability. Federal Tort Claims Act. So driving a government vehicle to perform your agency's mission as directed by your agency and the scope of your employment. You are protected by the Federal Tort Claims Act if you're a federal employee in the United States and acting within the scope of your employment. Go to the personal liability class. So what's the deal? FMR versus FPMR. I kind of already went through that. The things that are still stuck in the FPMR are purchase of new vehicles and the GSA fleet. There is a GSA fleet customer leasing guide, and coming soon will be a motor vehicle policy customer guide. And then 10234 and 10239 is replacement exchange sale. Oh wait, I think they got rid of that. Need to look at that. Anyway, and then federal travel regulations 41 CFR 301. More stuff. Oh my goodness, we are heavily regulated here in federal fleets, aren't we? A couple of executive orders listed here. OMB Circular A11. Why do we have to fill that out and fast every August? It's because it's part of the budget process. OMB Circular A11. If you're ever looking for something interesting to learn more about your craft as a fleet manager, federal fleet manager, there's an OMB Circular A119, which talks about federal government participating in voluntary consensus standards and activities, ASTM. There is an ASTM standard for federal fleet management. Unfortunately, it costs you money to get a copy, but it's a good read. Okay. 323. Goodness, I can't talk forever, can I? Internet is a wealth of information. Had this happen today, and I just want people to understand, if you want to research a reg, look for a government website to do it. Okay. So if I was going to look up 41 CFR 102-34, the new one that we just published December 16th, Am I going to Cornell Law School's Legal Information Institute to read that? No, don't read our regulation there. It may not be up to date. Look on the ECFR. And then if I'm doing a random internet search and it talks about the use of government vehicles, is that necessarily government-wide policy? No, I get this thrown at me all the time. This use of government-owned vehicles. It's actually for an agency policy that they find and will quote. Okay, so you need to ask, is this government-wide policy or is this agency policy I just found? SBA, you know, because there's agency guidance out there. And these are just resources. This will be emailed to you. More resources. So I left 5 minutes for any other questions. I'm not going to go through these, but the FedFleet Policy Council, we meet alternating months from Interfuel's working group. FedFleet, all caps, is ours. The Interfuel working group is DOE FEMP. FedFleet Toggle Case is the annual training event that we had to cancel because of snow, but that's why we're here today for virtual. There's an energy exchange that DOE FEMP puts on every year. And then I wanted to highlight that the National Property Management Association has an Innovations in Fleet Management Award. Many federal fleet managers have won this over the years. The deadline is April 30th. So please go check out that award, nominate your friends, nominate yourself, nominate your team, okay, for an Innovations in Fleet Management Award. And that's what I have. If you're getting a copy of the presentation, you're getting some more slides because I thought I wouldn't have enough to talk about, but obviously I did. This is a good one. We were going to do this workshop about agency policy versus GSA fleet policy versus government-wide policy workshop at FedFleet if it hadn't snowed. But if you have a question about GSA fleet lease vehicles or purchasing vehicles, you should talk to your fleet service rep for help. Or if applicable, your agency fleet manager can contact your national advisory account team. Or the GSA fleet policy team is fleet.operations@gsa.gov. And that's for all things GSA fleet. Our next FedFleet meeting is March 25th, 2026. And then we did have a question. I think this is more operational. If we need a GSA lease vehicle serviced or towed from a government parking garage and GSA refers us to a service provider, can the employee of that service provider drive that vehicle from the garage to the service location by themselves? This happened to us recently and we didn't find anything in the leasing guide about it. So there are times in the federal government, I'm not going to specifically answer this question because I think you should talk to your fleet service rep about it. But say I'm TDY and I have a government vehicle with me and it's a downtown Washington, D.C. And to get my government vehicle parked, I have to give it to valet. It's a normal business practice, okay? That valet will drive that vehicle. I mean, they won't let me drive my own vehicle to a parking garage because valet has to do it. I think that falls in the same category here, that it's a normal business practice that a tow truck driver or a mechanic will have to drive a government vehicle. But I would rather GSA Fleet answer that question because it's a GSA Fleet leased vehicle question, and your FSR can definitely help you out with that.
Hey, Connie, I'm just going to jump in here real quick. And any requests for tows can also be made to the Accident Management Center or the Maintenance Control Center just by a quick phone call or an email as well. So you might want to, AMC@gsa.gov if you need a quick tow, or you can call their 800 number.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So we have 2 more minutes. Hey, Marquita and Eric, or if y'all are still there, can y'all come off? And Jill, come on camera and let's just show everybody our faces. So here's our star team over here at OGP. Where did Eric go? There he is. We're all here to help. We like to help people, right? And we're all here to talk. Obviously,
You
I
know
like
what?
to talk. I told my crew I was going to let them talk, right? And look, I talked for the whole 90 minutes and I still didn't get to all my slots. I crack myself up sometimes. So, but we're all here to help you here at GSA OGP. And, you know, GSA Fleet is a fabulous partner. They have an entire staff waiting to help you too. They have policy, they have FSRs, the Maintenance Control Center, Accident Control Center. But did I get all the questions? Do you think?
So,
Not bad.
You did, Connie. You did it all in 90 minutes. That's quite a feat.
Well,
Sessions
thank
as
you
we
for having
sometimes
us.
used to give you 4 hours. So, you
Yeah,
know,
I
good
know,
job.
exactly. I could talk for 4 hours, can I? But see, then I'd make the people in the audience participate. So,
All
all right,
Well,
thank you guys.
thank you to OGP and Connie and team. They were all behind the scenes vigorously answering all those questions. So thanks everyone for attending virtual FedFleet 2026. And that's all for this week, but we will have more next week. So just check the website, and you should we've sent out a reminder next week as well. So just keep checking. We've got more all the way through till March, to a week. So this recording will be posted to the GSA Fleet YouTube. Connie mentioned that if you do need a presentation, you can email her at vehicle.policy@gsa.gov, because the presentation, the slides will not be posted online. If you do, for whatever reason, need an actual certificate, you can email us at fedfleet@gsa.gov, but I warn you, if you have an active FAI CSOT account, we won't be sending it. We're just this is something new for FedFleet, but it is the way GSA is going for our trainings, to not send certificates. So we're trying to see what we can do here. But if you really do need a certificate, feel free to email us. Otherwise, you'll see it in your CSOT account.
Hey,
And any other
Mary Ann,
questions? Yes.
Mary, can we say that FAI stands for Federal Acquisition Institute?
We sure can, because
Okay.
I forget sometimes what it stands for.
Yeah, what's the C? I don't know what the C is. FAIC.
CSOT, I don't know. It's the part that
Me
you
neither.
sign into, customer something. I
Okay.
don't know what that part is, but FAI is your Federal Acquisition Institute. And so you do not have to be an acquisition person to have an account. But it's for anyone, you know, if you're core or a warrant, or even just to take additional training. It's a great resource, and it is, most agencies do use it, and you can just sign up yourself for that. So please look into that. And it's an easy way to get your CLPs automatically without having to submit certificates and ask for them and all of that. So I ask everyone to look into that. It'll make it so much easier for you. But if you do need that certificate, email us at fedfleet@gsa.gov. And for any other questions, that's all we have. And hopefully we'll see you in person in 2027 or sometime in between. So thanks everyone for attending.
Thank you.
See you next time. Bye-bye.